Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we're taking on a full teardown and rebuild of the 54 liters 14-gallon cherry shrimp tank. We'll cover everything, from choosing the right soil composition to creating a stunning hardscape, planting a variety of aquatic plants, and introducing a bustling community of snails, cherry shrimp, chocolate shrimp, orange sakuras, and even a mysterious little survival expert who somehow found its way into the tank. Stick around, you won't want to miss the transformation. Before we get any of the new shrimps into this tank, we of course first have to tear down everything. So as you can see, we have lots of guppy fish in this fish tank. First of all, I'm going to remove some of the water, some of the plants that are swimming on the surface, like duckweed and stuff. There's plenty of it in there, and I have a lot of it in my other tank, so just can throw it away this time. Usually I don't like throwing away plants, but in this time it's okay because I don't want to have too much duckweed in the new setup as well. Then I'm trying to catch all of the guppy fish, because in the new setup I actually don't want to have any guppy fish left. I only want to have Neocaridina shrimp, maybe 3 or 4 different varieties, so they mix and breed new hybrids, which is very interesting, and no major other fish. Maybe 1 or 2 smaller fish species, but not as big as guppies. And after I caught all of the guppy fish, I can start with removing the plants, and I already have like maybe 20 liters of water on the side, so I can just refill the new tank without needing any kind of quick start or something like chemicals, so I can just naturally restart it again later. Now I removed this huge plant here, so I have to cut off some of its roots. It's a gigantic plant really, I didn't even realize it was that big, and later on you will see it again because I will of course replant all of these plants in the new scape again. Now I also removed most of the soil here. The reason why I'm doing this, or not why I'm removing it, but why I want to reuse the soil, is because there's also lots and lots of beneficial bacteria, and soil is quite expensive, so why would I not reuse it? I tore down the whole tank and tried to clean it a little bit, and now it's time to move away this old cabinet, this old IKEA rack, and put in this new like heavy duty shelf here. And then I can put the tank back on. I know it looks a little bit dirty, but that's all done on purpose. So I didn't remove this algae or biofilm in the back of the tank, because that's actually something I aim for. Fish and shrimps really love to graze on biofilm, also snails, so I don't want to remove it in the back section of the tank. And here in the sped up version you can already see the snails down there. There's many bladder snails in there already, and we will add more snails later on as well. So I reused also some of the soil from another scape to just have a thick layer of sediment in the tank, and now it's time to start with the hardscaping, or with the aquascaping rather. I don't consider myself an aquascaper or anything, because I don't think my tanks are particularly visually appealing. In this case I'm aiming for like a really beautiful also hardscape setup in this tank. And for that I just use rocks that I collected in the wild near a river, or at a river shoreline, so to say. The reason why I collected them in the wild is first of all to save money, as always, but secondly also because there's probably beneficial bacteria on them from the river as well. And here you can see a sped up version of all of these snails moving around hunting each other in the bucket, where I stored some Lobelia cardinalis plants that I will insert later, but also some of the soil that I just inserted a few minutes ago. Now I'm making some space for this giant plant that we removed a few minutes ago. Also, this Ramshorn snail, I don't know how it got in there, but there was one random Ramshorn snail. It's named Gordon Ramsay, the Ramshorn snail. I leave it in there. Maybe we can add some more Ramshorn snails later on. You can maybe comment below whether you would do that or not, but for now we only have one in there. I have them in some of my other smaller setups. I keep many Ramshorn snails, but not in my larger tanks yet, although I think they are quite beautiful. Now it's important to keep these plants wet before filling the tank, and after filling the tank you can already see all of these snails moving and wiggling around in this sped up version. Especially the Melanoides tuberculata and the Ramshorn snail, you can see them scavenging or hunting debris and stuff throughout the tank. Now it's time to plant. Now, I didn't want to reuse all of the plants from the previous scape, and I also wanted to aim for another look, because I noticed that most of the plants outgrew this tank pretty quickly, and therefore I decided to only put smaller plants in there. So namely the Cryptocorynes that you see in the back here that I inserted, and also these smaller foreground plants here, because they won't grow larger than like 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, and that's totally fine for this tank. And behind this line here, so behind this Hardscape line, I want relatively large plants, so the Cryptocoryne and this unknown gigantic plant. In front of this line, I don't want any other plant that grows larger than, let's say, 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, just to have a better sight and a more visually appealing look of this tank. And I think it already looks very pretty, and you can just enjoy it for a minute now. So the tank is slowly but surely getting clearer and clearer, as you can see. And now I also decided to add some Lobelia cardinalis plants, which are really slow growing but absolutely beautiful looking plants. I don't know what other plant they could be similar to, but they have just a very distinct look in my opinion, especially compared to the other plants that I usually keep. So I really enjoy keeping those Lobelia cardinalis plants, and that's why I decided to also add them to my smaller setup here. And I really love to use a planting stick for this, like for really any planting or any plant except for really large plants. I usually use planting sticks because it's just way easier. You don't hurt the plant. The roots really get deep or deeply inserted into the soil, and this really helps and makes your life so much easier. And such a stick costs maybe €5, I don't even know it, and it's super handy. So I really encourage you guys to get one of these, and with that you can easily plant any kind of stem plant, any kind of rosette plant. Also these Lobelia cardinalis plants here are no problem at all with this kind of stick. Now let's add the shrimp that we got out of the tank before again. So now that the tank has cycled for like 4 or 5 hours maybe, it's time to add the orange Sakura shrimps again. And as I mentioned before, there's only 2 of them in there, so we'll definitely have to add some more shrimp in a few days. But first of all, we'll let the Neocaridina orange Sakura shrimps acclimate and get used to their new tank. Also, I want to see if anything is wrong with the water, so I let it cycle for a few more hours or even days, and then in 2 or 3 days I will get them some shrimp buddies. So now it's time to add these new shrimps to this tank, and this time I decided to get 2 different varieties of Neocaridina shrimp. We have cherry shrimp, so the most classical Neocaridina variety there is, I would say, and we do have chocolate shrimp. So chocolate Neocaridina Davidi shrimp are actually absolutely beautiful. I never kept them, and the idea is that they interbreed, so that they mix. That's why I got 5 of each of them, and we still have the 2 orange sakuras in there. And before adding them, of course, I have to acclimatize them to their new water and to their new temperature, pH, hardness of the water. For doing that, you just add some amount of water step by step to their transport container. Very simple process. Some other people put a bag in the tank, which is even better because then the temperature acclimatizes even faster, I would say. Unfortunately, my local pet store doesn't sell fish or crustaceans in bags, so I have to use the container. But actually it's a little more sustainable because you can also return the container when you are done using it. So I think it has its pros and cons, but yeah, I think for the fish it would have been better, or for the shrimp it would have been better to acclimatize them in a floating bag in the tank. And now what I like to do is I like to give them something to hold on to Usually they should do this in the local pet store. Like they usually add some plastic or something. They didn't do it this time, but it's not that big of a thing because they only were in this container for like 20 minutes until I reached my flat. So what I do is I just cut off one of the old leaves. One of the old leaves I wanted to remove anyways, or even two, and this is then something that the shrimp can use to hold on to. And it's interesting because you can see the CO2 floating out of the places where I cut the old leaves. And now I do this 2 more times. So I usually take 1 to 1.5 hours to acclimatize new fish or new crustaceans. And this is now the 3rd time that I'm adding some of the tank water. And after that, it's very safe to add them to the tank without them being shocked or overly stressed. And now you can see the tank. I think it looks crystal clear compared to 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And this time I'm just pouring them in with the transport water because they were really, it's like maybe half a liter. So not even 10% of a gallon, I would say, that they were transported in. And this is no problem with regards to the quality of my tank or with regards to transferring any kind of disease or something. Also because I don't have any like other crustacean in there left or any other fish, except for one very small fish. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there's a very, very tiny guppy fish left in this tank. I don't know how in the world this guppy fish could have survived this whole remodeling, but apparently he did, or she, I cannot tell yet. And you can see the little guy swimming over here, just doing its thing. It's, I think, completely alone, so there's no other guppy fish. And it's like a castaway, and it's quite difficult for me to remove it now. Because if I add it to my other guppy tank, the other guppies will probably just eat it. So now I'm adding the shrimp. And as you can see, they are slowly but surely entering the tank. There's one of the black ones, so one of the chocolate shrimp, the next chocolate shrimp, some cherry shrimp, another chocolate shrimp, and now all of the 11 shrimp are in there and starting to explore their new scape. And the amazing thing about shrimp compared to most fish species is when you add them to a new tank, they just start doing their thing right away. And the little guppy fish is also eating whatever was in this transport box. So it's also, it seems quite self-confident, I would say. And I think we should name it Wilson. If you know the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, his ball was called Wilson. So I think I want to call it Wilson, and I would like to know whether you guys would remove it from this tank, whether you would get it a buddy like another guppy baby, or whether we should just and study it over the next few months, how it grows in this tank. I think it would be interesting. I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. So please share your opinion in the comments. We can also have a closer look at some of the shrimp. So here we have one of the cherry shrimp exploring its new scape. This is right after I added it, and I think it looks absolutely beautiful. And as I said, the shrimp instantly start eating. And shrimp are really good biofilm eaters. They really require, like I would say, a planted tank, or at least a tank with lots of surface area. So there's a lot of biofilm forming. And there's also like a baby shrimp that they just added for free, which I really appreciate from the pet store worker. And then there's some more cherry shrimp. And I think, to me, honestly, they are absolutely beautiful. The way they are in contrast with the background is really, really beautiful, I must say. Also, Gordon Ramsay, the Ramshorn snail chilling down there. But then we have also more other snail species, for instance the Melanoides tuberculata, which are quite young in this tank, so they will grow bigger and bigger. And here you can see one of them that is doing its job here, also eating biofilm. So in a way they compete with shrimp, I would say, or with Neocaridina shrimp. But in another way they also have another niche, or occupy another ecological niche, because they bury themselves in the ground and eat all kinds of stuff in the ground, and shrimps are just not, or Neocaridina davidi shrimp are just not able to do that. So in a way they compete, in another way they are quite nice tank neighbors, I would say, or animals you can add to the same community tank, because they don't compete for exactly the same niche, which I think is quite handy. And with this snail, I've never seen this. It has 3 horn-like appendages, or I don't know, body parts on top of its head, which is quite interesting. I've, as I said, never seen that before, and I wonder what these things are used for. So if any one of you knows, please leave a comment below. Would be interesting to know, maybe also for other viewers and people on YouTube. And here's another shot of one of the Melanoides tuberculata snails, or red-rimmed Melania snails as they are called scientifically. It's munching all kinds of biofilm from these hard rocks here. They are really beautiful snails. They don't harm animals unless the animals died. Then they of course eat them. Beautiful, beautiful community tank member. And here you can see the first close-up of one of the chocolate shrimp. Maybe it's a chocolate or a wild choco shrimp. I'm not 100% sure about the difference, to be honest, but it's absolutely beautiful. And for me, it looks a little bit like one of the aliens from Alien vs. Predator, and it looks absolutely beautiful, especially in the way it uses its little limbs or arms. They actually feed using their claw-like appendages at the end of their first 2 pairs of legs, which look a little bit like those appendages that also larger crustaceans such as crayfish have. They are not really or claws in the sense of a claw where they could attack other animals with it, which makes them quite a good animal for such community setups. Here's one of the older shrimps, both in terms of age and also time in this tank. So these 2 orange Sakura shrimp were in the tank before, and at the moment it is just chilling, but there will be a fight later on. So stay tuned for that. I just love the variety in these small little animals. Here we have one of the chocolate shrimp again grazing on one of the Cryptocoryne leaves. It's absolutely amazing to see how they process the food with their tiny little claws. So apparently they use their first 2 pairs of legs to move the food to their claws, and then use the claws to move the food into their mouths. You cannot see this with your eyes, you really, or at least I cannot see it with my eyes because my eyesight is probably not good enough, but you can in fact see it with your camera. So if you zoom in, you can definitely see way more detail. So even if you're not a YouTuber or anything, I encourage you guys to use your phone and just zoom in. Use the zoom lens. It's very interesting to see your animals close up. I also have a magnifier glass, but that's probably just because I'm a freak. So here you can see one of the shrimp pellets. They are hesitant and don't really eat it right away, but the biofilm that is in the tank, they just instantly go for it. Right when I added them to the tank. Actually, like all of the crustaceans they will periodically molt, and you should ideally leave the exoskeletons that are then remaining in your tank. So don't try to siphon them out, don't try to remove them, because the other shrimps and also the shrimp that molted will eat the exoskeletons, and the nutrients they contain go back into their newly formed shells, so to say. Here we have Gordon, the Ramshorn snail again, checking out the window or the front glass and trying to munch his way through the tank. And you can also see algae growing on his back. We can see some of the bladder snails that are also present in this tank that are just chilling. At the beginning I thought the cherry shrimp is already trying to mate with this female orange Sakura shrimp here. Remember, they are all the same species, they are just different breeds or different, let's say, races. But then I noticed that they are actually fighting for some food. And it's quite interesting because the orange Sakura shrimp is really twice the size of the other shrimp, because they are just not as old, or maybe they are also males and the orange Sakura is a female. Because there is a quite large sexual dimorphism in the Neocaridina species, so males are usually way smaller and females are way larger and have this saddle where in their back, and you can also see it with this female here, they form egg clutches that are then transferred to their abdomen, I would say, which they can use to circulate water over the eggs with their pleopods. So their swimming legs are called pleopods, to ensure the health of their eggs. And also, females will abandon their eggs if they are stressed. So I hope this female here will actually give birth to some eggs first, and then will actually also hatch them, so that we can see some hybrids here. And now they are stacking on top of each other, which is also quite an interesting scene. And it's quite different to, let's say, dwarf crayfish that I kept in one of my other tanks. You can check out the video on the top right here, because their claws are so small that they cannot really hurt each other. And for dwarf crayfish, this is definitely the case. Dwarf crayfish can and will hurt each other, but Neocaridina, Davidi shrimp cannot really hurt each other or other animals, I would generally say, unless I'm missing something like a smaller animal here. Thanks for watching until this point. If you found this video interesting, I'm sure you will love the video where I simulated a jungle river for 130 days and also added multiple different crustaceans. You can find it on the right hand side here, or check out my most recent video on the left hand side. Thanks for watching.